welcome to part 3 of my series on sex in the Watchtower publications. Last time, we made it all the way to 1976. Today we're going to start back in 1977. This video is not safe for work and also contains really overly explicit language. Let's get started. Today's first article was in the Watchtower in 1977, and it's called Working Together for the Unity of the Family. This article is, of course, again talking about marriage.
While the man and the woman are to delight in each other and their closeness in the husband-wife relationship, they are to avoid unnatural practices, such as sodomy, oral copulation, and the like.
Oh my.
We say unnatural because the man and the woman were clearly not designed for these practices by their Creator, and His Word stresses the need to avoid the unclean practices characteristic of the world.
Their language is so weird. Why do they refer to everything as a practice? And how can they say that clearly anal and oral are unnatural? Think about it though. Okay, it feels nice. Everything fits. I mean, as long as all parties are enjoying themselves, what the hell's the problem? How does Watchtower even think that this is any of their business? Why are they so obsessed with this? And of course they've referenced the same tired scripture about leaving the natural use of the female and blah, blah, blah. And I've been thinking about that scripture since my first video in this series, and I thought it might be helpful to provide some illustrations on the proper and improper use of objects in case you need some assistance. Also, women are people, not paintbrushes. If you're using your partner in some way, you're kind of a shitty person and you need to reevaluate your life.
On all sides, it seems that sex of every kind is a commodity to be bought and sold.
Really? I'm not seeing it. Look, I've been worldly for over 20 years now, and I have never, ever seen this. I'm serious. I mean, I know that prostitution and human trafficking are a thing, and they exist, but they're talking about this like it's the norm. We were taught as witnesses that it's an everyday occurrence for all worldly people to talk about sex in this kind of graphic detail, that people would be propositioning you right and left all the time, and it's just not true. It's not true. I have never encountered the kind of constant dwelling and brooding on sex that happens in the witnesses anywhere in the outside world. Moving right along.
We should not want to walk as near the brink of wrongdoing as possible, feeling that we have certain rights and determinations that we ourselves can make if we choose.
Yeah, you shouldn't even think about making your own decisions about anything if you're a Jehovah's Witness. If you're a witness, you don't get to do that.
Nor should we excuse ourselves by saying that there is no direct writing in black and white in the scriptures dealing exactly and in the most minute detail with a certain course of doubtful conduct. There is no evidence that in the days of Noah there was a written law condemning what the angels were doing in cohabiting with the daughters of men, but it was nevertheless wrong, immoral, and wicked.
What does Noah have to do with anything? Okay, so even if there are no written rules against whatever fun thing it is you want to do, you should still know it's wrong and you have no excuse. Got it.
God saw that the earth came to be ruined and filled with violence. He destroyed that world of wickedness, saving only 8 righteous souls.
So what, are they trying to say that if you blow your husband, you could be responsible for Jehovah killing everybody in the world? What the fuck?
Later, God destroyed the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah for the wicked practice of sodomy. But there is nothing in Scripture to indicate that the people of that time had any written rules laid down in black and white from God specifically forbidding such practices.
Yeah, but you're saying they weren't told it was wrong in either case, but they should have known, because how? And again, neither of these stories have anything to do with the subject at hand, and neither of them actually happened. But please, tell us how these imaginary people should have known, without any guidance on this subject, that these things were unnatural, even though they felt nice and everything fit and all that.
God had put the faculty of conscience into man from the beginning. Man fundamentally knows what is right and what is wrong, what practices are evil and condemned by God. Man basically knows what God intended when he put the procreative powers in the man and woman and made it possible by the sexual union of the two to produce offspring.
Oh my.
Therefore, man basically knows that sodomy is wrong, that oral copulation is wrong, that bestiality is wrong, along with adultery, fornication, homosexuality, and like practices.
Oh, wait. If we basically know the difference between right and wrong already, then why do we need Watchtower to tell us? Shouldn't we be able to have certain rights and determinations that we ourselves can make as we choose? No? Why? Don't you just love how they group consensual anal and oral sex and other normal human behavior with bestiality? Y'all, bestiality is wrong because animals can't consent. That's pretty basic stuff. But you notice that they don't mention rape in any of this? Like, they very easily could have said here that rape is wrong and wicked. They could have said child molestation is wrong and evil. They could have acknowledged the idea of consent at all, but they didn't. Doesn't that seem weird to you? In fact, they don't mention those things in any of their needlessly clinical and graphic descriptions of sex, except for a very few occasions where the focus is not on the wrong nature of raping someone, but instead on how a victim should behave and whether she should be punished for being victimized or not. These people are fucked in the head. The obsession continues. In our next article, Marriage, an arrangement honored in God's Word. Another gem from the Watchtower in 1977.
Perverted practices engaged in by homosexuals who in such practice do not have natural, normal copulation between themselves have been adopted also by some married couples in search of greater thrills, specifically oral and anal copulation.
Can you just imagine how this would play out? A husband and wife are sitting on the side of the bed going, I don't know. We just need to search for greater thrills. I'm really kind of bored with the handshake and insertion deal, and you can't get it up anymore. I mean, where could we go for inspiration? I know. Homosexuals are vilified all the time at the Kingdom Hall for being sick, perverted, kinky bastards. Let's try some of their sexual methodology and see if that'll get the little soldier to come to attention. Then we come to 1978, when they have a new, scintillating article in the Watchtower entitled Sex Without Marriage, Why It Hurts. Okay, if it hurts, you're doing it wrong.
Some people may laugh scornfully at the idea that it is hurtful to share sexual intimacies when unmarried.
Yeah, they do, and for good reason. It doesn't hurt if you're doing it right. Trust me, unless you're into that and have a safe word.
They may wonder what harm is done to their bodies when they give in to these desires outside wedlock. But do they forget that they are inside their bodies, within themselves? Do they not have a personality, a reasoning mind, and a heart longing for real love and security?
So if you have sex outside marriage, then you have no personality, no mind, and no heart? Oh, fuck off.
Inward wounds resulting from abandonment by a temporary lover can bleed for years.
Yeah, but so can inward wounds resulting from sexual repression, or even from being molested as a child by a Jehovah's Witness who is never reported to the authorities, but what the hell do I know?
Also, insensibilities can be developed, and these would not promote health and happiness either.
What does this mean? Sex doesn't typically make you insensible, maybe if it's really good.
People are coming to realize more and more that the use of the sexual organs outside wedlock does not bring lasting satisfaction and joy.
Wait, we can't use them at all? I mean, they know some of these organs are dual purpose, right? I mean, this is bad news, guys, especially for you guys. I guess if you have to pee, you need to find another way, because the penis is off limits unless you're married. But the absurdity continues.
A wife undergoes not only a physical change during her first sexual contact,
Oh my.
but also an alteration of her personality.
No. What the fuck are they talking about?
When still a virgin, probably she desired a boyfriend, someone to speak with and to lean on.
Oh yes, someone to speak with. That's what I always dreamed of.
After having intercourse, however, a woman starts to long for a man, in another sense of the word.
Oh my.
Jehovah God, as the creator, called this craving for her husband.
Oh no, she might enjoy sex. A change in her entire being, the very fiber of who she is, because we all know that women are completely asexual until touched by the mighty phallus. This is so stupid, not to mention insulting. I mean, the Jehovah's Witness imagination is like some kind of Disney movie on ecstasy. How do they come up with this crap? Are these Watchtower men even remotely acquainted with any actual women? Because I'm starting to doubt it.
A girl who is too eager to get married is in danger of allowing her boyfriend too many liberties with her. Afraid of losing this friend, she may try to tie him to her with unclean courting.
Yes.
But girls, please ask yourselves, with what do I tie him? Think, does he have genuine interest in your personality and in your mental qualities and noble sentiments? Or rather, will he not leave you if you do not continue to share with him in sexual activities?
Say what now? Oh, don't we all know that girls just want to get married and pioneer? 'Cause there are no girls who just want to have sex? No, that never happens. And if a guy is sexually attracted to you, then he doesn't have any genuine interest in your mental qualities and noble sentiments? How are those things mutually exclusive? I don't get it. This is trash. This is trash. And what about the Jehovah's Witness men who tried to entrap women? Because that happened too, all the time.
How long can women yielding to immoral advances attract their partners? No longer than a woman of easy virtue can catch the eye and arouse the passions of her irresponsible friends, who is then left deeply injured.
Right, so if you have sex with your boyfriend, girls, he's gonna leave you because you're a dirty whore. And the only way to keep him and ensnare him into marrying you, wait for it, is to make him wait for it. Refuse to put out. Girls who have sexual feelings and thoughts are just whores and no one's ever gonna love them.
In the same way, can a young man who makes immoral advances to his girlfriend expect to be respected by her later in life?
Yeah. Why wouldn't he? As long as the advances were encouraged and consent was given on all sides, I don't see how his being sexually attracted to her is any cause for disrespect later. In fact, I was always quite pleased when a boyfriend was happy to see me. My premarital relationships included joyous and exuberant advances, and the subsequent marriage has been a joy and a delight on all fronts. So don't give me this puritanical, shame-ridden guilt trip bullshit.
The scriptures indicate that God will judge fornicators and adulterers adversely. What could hurt more than that?
I don't know, blue balls?
Remember, too, that one act of immorality may ruin a whole career of a once happy servant of God. And this cannot be rectified by a hurried marriage.
These people don't have careers. What are they talking about? Are you going to get fired from your window washing job for fornicating? Wait, I guess if you're a witness, this is entirely possible. Never mind. But even if you did fornicate or whatever, why would you feel like you had to rush and get married? I mean, even if you're pregnant, rushing into a marriage is not a good idea. I watched my sister's unfortunate experience doing this very thing when she was 18, and I'll tell you, everybody in the world would have been better off if that particular wedding had never taken place.
Like scratches on a phonograph record that spoil the full enjoyment of music, so the full peace and happiness of the marriage itself can be disturbed by past negative sexual experiences.
First of all, even in 1978, phonographs were kind of obsolete. And what makes them think that every single sexual experience outside marriage is negative? Well, because they'll make it negative by shaming and punishing and disfellowshipping everybody.
Sexual activity outside marriage defiles both the man and the woman. Unquestionably, that is Jehovah God's view. Otherwise, he would not prohibit unmarried persons from engaging in sexual intimacies.
Then why did he make it so fun and easy? What is his problem?
Moreover, the universal sovereign does not approve of greedy and disorderly individuals.
Has anybody told the governing body? But wait, it should be at least more okay if you're engaged, right? Wrong.
Engagement, or preparing to get married, is something other than being united in wedlock already, is it not? Well then, consider, what would you think of a man who had not been appointed as an overseer in the Christian congregation, but who was trying to assume the position of such an elder? He would be presumptuous.
Actually, no, he would be viewed as reaching out and probably commended.
And what happened to certain individuals of ancient times who presumptuously ran ahead and did not wait for Jehovah? Were they injured?
I think they pulled a hammy.
Yes, on occasion even to the point of death, sooner or later.
Well, everybody dies sooner or later. What's your point? Yes, guys, you heard that right. If you have sex before marriage, you might die. Can somebody please cite an example of a committed monogamous couple who died because they had sex before walking down the aisle and signing a piece of paper? Pop quiz. How did humanity survive before marriage was invented?
But how can an engaged couple build up real respect for each other if they see and know that both of them have become involved in greedy, immoral conduct?
My!
Does this inspire confidence? No, for much jealousy in marriage is brought about through negative experiences with each other before entering wedlock.
No, it isn't. Guys, I have never once been jealous of myself. There have been 0 problems in my marriage because we wrecked the bed before the wedding. None. And how is it greedy and immoral to do something that both of you want to do and enjoy immensely?
Cannot a downhearted wife say years later, "You only wanted a woman, not just me"? And how can her husband then prove the contrary to be true? He cannot.
This is actually kind of sad. I really feel like this writer was talking about his own sad marriage. Because a Jehovah's Witness wife could easily say this regardless of whether they had sex before the wedding or not. And I'm pretty sure that many actually do. As in, now I'm stuck with this asshole for the rest of my life, and he only married me because I was the only single sister in the circuit without a goiter or a colostomy bag. He wasn't in love with me. He just wanted to fuck. I mean, this is way too specific not to come from someone's own experience. And he's freely admitting that he can't actually prove she's wrong. It really has nothing to do with whether they banged before or after the wedding, and waiting until after probably makes this complaint more likely.
Well, how can a man before his marriage to a particular woman prove that he is really in love with her?
I don't know, he could tell her. Or they could do things that normal humans do when they love each other.
By respecting her chastity. He thus displays his unselfish love for his future wife. He also shows that he is as good as his word.
I mean, I get it if one partner does not want to have sex. That's okay. It's a perfectly reasonable decision. You communicate it, and the other person respects your non-consent, right? But if both parties want to get it on, there is no reason why they shouldn't, and lots of reasons why they should. I mean, what if they wait until marriage, and then on the wedding night, she finds out that he lost his penis in a tragic encounter with an angry dog out in service or something. Or he finds out that she hates to be touched and will only render her marital due on a quarterly basis. Or what if they're just not compatible? I mean, and what about this? How many Jehovah's Witness marriages are stunted by sexual dysfunction simply because both husband and wife have been brainwashed all their lives to think that sex and sexual feelings are wrong and sinful? How are they just supposed to flip a switch on their wedding day so that suddenly it's all right? This is truly an issue, guys. My mother used to tell me a story about waking up in an absolute panic the morning after her wedding on her honeymoon and thinking she's done something terrible and she's going to be in huge trouble. There is something deeply wrong with this.
Perhaps he had promised the girl's father that he would not touch her in an unclean manner. How shameful it would be if he now had to confess that he has made the man's daughter pregnant. Would that be a fine start for a marriage?
Well, it was a fine start for a lot of Jehovah's Witness marriages I know of, so... Don't you love how the important thing here is the promise he made to her father and not the consequences to her, the one actually carrying a baby now, for getting pregnant? Because, you know, what men think is far more important than what it's actually happening to a woman's body. Did I mention these people are sick? And speaking of sick, let's go on to our next article. It's from also the Watchtower in 1978, and it's entitled Incestuous Marriages. How should Christians view them? Is this really a question that anybody had to ask? I mean, are there Jehovah's Witnesses out there who earnestly question whether they can marry their sister?
What constitutes an incestuous marriage? What information does the Bible supply that can aid Christians in determining the view that they should take regarding these? Incest refers to sexual connections between close relatives.
Do you hear banjos?
For Christians, a vital factor is the desire to maintain marriage in honor and to avoid bringing it into disrepute, taking into consideration the conscience of others, both inside and outside the Christian congregation.
What will the neighbors think? You mean to tell me that we are personally responsible for the reputation of the entire institution of marriage? Please.
The law covenant's prohibition of certain marital relationships among close relatives clearly provides a guiding principle, but the fact remains that Christians are not under the law given to fleshly Israel. Hence, the Christian congregation is not authorized to try to enforce that law by insisting on adherence to its code through the avoidance of each and every prohibited marital relationship it lists.
Whoa. So Watchtower will tell people that they can't have oral or anal sex with their own spouse, but they'll let them marry their sister? What the fuck? I guess as long as no one knows or appears offended by it. I don't know about this.
Actual proximity of blood relationships or of family closeness due to marriage does not alone seem to have determined the morality or immorality of the relationship.
Yeah, because the law covenant was written by goat herders 2,000 years ago, guys.
Thus, a nephew could not marry his aunt, but there was no prohibition against an uncle marrying his niece. Obviously, the proximity of blood relationship, or if aunts and uncles through marriage are involved, the proximity of family relationship, was no greater or less in either case. Yet one was allowable and the other was not. A man could not marry his brother's widow, something that today in many lands would not be viewed as incestuous.
Right, because they're not related, dingbat.
And yet, it may be noted that under the law covenant, where a man died without having fathered an heir, his brother was called upon by the law to take the widow as his wife, so as to produce an heir in his brother's name. This shows that such relationship was not deemed intrinsically or inherently bad or immoral.
So he can't marry his brother's widow, but he has to if she doesn't have children.
Marriage by first cousins, where blood ties are quite close, was not prohibited. Marriage to a half-sister was prohibited, but no prohibition is stated against a son marrying a stepdaughter of his father, that is, an adoptive daughter, not the offspring of the son's parents.
So they kinda say you can't marry your sister, but not really. Y'all, is this a thing? Are there cousins getting married still? And Jehovah's Witnesses really need to be instructed on this? Really?
Does the Bible set forth any specific definitions as to what is moral or immoral as regards the sexual relationship between husband and wife? Is it the responsibility of congregational elders to endeavor to exercise control among congregation members in these intimate marital matters?
Wait, I thought we covered this already, rather exhaustively in 1972. Can't stop thinking about it, can you?
As the apostle states, love does not behave indecently, does not look for its own interest, does not become provoked. This would certainly preclude the forcing upon one's marriage mate unusual practices that the mate considers distasteful or even repugnant and perverted.
Well, obviously, if one spouse isn't into it, then it's a no-go. Duh. But this isn't quite what you said before, Watchtower. You implied that consensual acts between married people were depraved and sinful. And now you've moved the goalpost. I don't really think that's cool.
Beyond these basic guidelines, the scriptures do not go, and hence we cannot do more than counsel in harmony with what the Bible does say. In the past, some comments have appeared in this magazine in connection with certain unusual sex practices, such as oral sex, within marriage, and these were equated with gross sexual immorality.
I love how they say some comments, as if it was a passing remark and not a series of highly condemnatory articles, as if people's lives weren't ruined over this. And how the fuck is oral sex considered unusual? That's not unusual, y'all. You know what is? Talking about it all the time. In church.
On this basis, the conclusion was reached that those engaging in such sex practices were subject to disfellowshipping if unrepentant. The view was taken that it was within the authority of congregational elders to investigate and act in a judicial capacity regarding such practices in the conjugal relationship. A careful further weighing of this matter, however, convinces us that in view of the absence of clear scriptural instruction, these are matters for which the married couple themselves must bear the responsibility before God, and that these marital intimacies do not come within the province of the congregational elders to attempt to control nor take disfellowshipping action with such matters as the sole basis.
Okay, I'm going to translate this for you. We got a lot of unwelcome attention for this policy. In fact, we might have gotten some attention of the legal variety. Alienation of affection could definitely come into play here. An alienation of affection case is brought by a spouse who's been deserted as a result of a third party's actions. The deserted spouse files a lawsuit against the third party for the loss of affection that was provided through the marriage. Many states have actually done away with the ability to file this sort of suit, but 7 states in the United States still allow it, including North Carolina.
Of course, if any person chooses to approach an elder for counsel, he or she may do so, and the elder can consider scriptural principles with such a one, acting as a shepherd, but not attempting to, in effect, police the marital life of the one inquiring.
Why would anyone approach an elder for advice on their sex life? Why? I mean, if you need help, fine. Go to a marriage counselor or a sex therapist or somebody who knows what the hell they're doing, not a custodian in a shiny suit who probably has his own erectile dysfunction to deal with. Trust me, just don't.
This should not be taken as a condoning of all the various sexual practices that people engage in, for that is by no means the case.
No, of course not. You would never condone anything fun or interesting. So there's several more paragraphs here of drivel about the woman-hating Apostle Paul, which we are going to skip.
What then of a situation where a married person, perhaps a wife, approaches a congregational elder with the complaint that her marriage mate is abusing her by forcing sexual practices upon her that she rejects as repugnant and perverted?
Well, given the fact that the Jehovah's Witnesses couldn't give a flying fuck at a rolling donut if a woman is actually being beaten, I'm inferring from the context clues here that he wants a normal sexual relationship and that she is a brainwashed prude, proven by the fact that she is approaching an elder about her sex life. Now, I'm not saying that anyone should ever be coerced or forced into any sexual activity that they aren't totally into. I hope you know by now that I am completely against that type of thing. It's just that this is so infuriating after all the wives who've been told to be more submissive when they complain of actual abuse.
If the marriage mate is willing to discuss the matter, the elder, possibly in company with another elder—
Possibly another elder? What, aren't they worried about an orgy breaking out?
can offer to try to help the couple to solve their problem, giving scriptural counsel. What if a married person claims that certain sexual practices of the marriage mate are sufficiently gross to come within the scope of the Greek term porneia?
Ugh, well, at least it wouldn't have been as gross as the conversation being described, or this article for that matter.
As has been shown, the scriptures do not give specific information that allows for positive identification of certain sexual practices within marriage as being or not being porneia.
Is that why the Jehovah's Witnesses make such a big deal out of trying to positively identify it all the time? Isn't that why they ask so many intrusive, incredibly detailed questions in judicial committees? Because the premise is that they're trying to determine what Greek word the sin committed applies to, right? Or is the reason really that they just get off on it and they take their thrills where they can get them?
If a married person believes that the sexual practices of the mate, though not involving someone outside the marriage, are nevertheless of such a gross nature as to constitute a clear surrender to lewdness or a debauching in lewdness, then that must be his or her own decision and responsibility.
Say what now?
Such a one may hold that the circumstances provide scriptural basis for divorce. If so, he or she must accept full responsibility before God for any divorce action that might be taken. Elders cannot be expected to express approval scripturally of divorce if they are not sure of the grounds.
Wait a minute. According to the Jehovah's Witnesses, the only scriptural way out of a marriage is adultery or death. It's clearly stated here that there are no other people involved here. How can they even say this then? Are they hinting around that the divorcing mate on these grounds wouldn't be scripturally free? Or are they saying that they wouldn't chase her around to make sure she was alone for the rest of her life? Because they would.
At the same time, they are not authorized to impose their conscience on another when the matter is a questionable one.
Oh, really? Well, that's news to me. In my experience, elders truly relish imposing their conscience, their will, and their desires on others. But I digress. No, I suspect that this change was made for legal reasons. Somebody somewhere got sued. Probably several somebodies.
Having expressed what scriptural counsel they find fitting, they can then make clear to the one involved the seriousness of the matter and the full responsibility that must rest on him or her if divorce action is taken.
In other words, we can't legally prevent you from getting divorced, but we can shame you and make you miserable.
If a person is simply seeking a pretext to break the marriage bonds, then such a one can only expect God's disfavor. For of such treacherous dealing with one's mate, God says that he has hated a divorcing. God will judge fornicators and adulterers, and anyone divorcing simply on a pretext and then remarrying will not escape that judgment.
Well, there you have it, folks. Half the Jehovah's Witnesses I know are headed for judgment then. So what we gather from this is that it is actually possible to legally divorce someone for reasons other than adultery, but the witnesses will not consider this scriptural and will consider both parties not free to remarry. They can't stop either of them from remarrying someone else legally, though. They could only withhold privileges in the congregation and threaten the offender with reproof or disfellowshipping, but that could be a legal slippery slope for them, I think. Quite slippery indeed, actually, and yet I know of at least one person who is single and alone right now because of this bullshit. And I know of several other people who've played this system to the hilt and have been married multiple times. Basically, it's a joke.
The elders can be confident that the Lord will both bring the secret things of darkness to light and make the counsels of the hearts manifest in his due time. Anyone who sows in deceit and treachery will not escape a harvest of suffering, for God is not one to be mocked.
Well, actually, I don't know about that. I mean, if he's not to be mocked, then why does he make it so easy? He could at least make it a little bit of a challenge, but no. Instead, he seems very unnecessarily preoccupied with what we're doing with our naughty bits. Well, tune in next time for part 4 of Sex in Watchtower Publications. Until then, I'm Sister Fister. This is crazy.